Broken skateboard led to an encounter with suspicious individuals. These events happened when I was 17, and I'm a male, in a densely populated suburb of Los Angeles. One Friday, I was hanging out with a friend of mine, and we were skating around my neighborhood. My friend lived a 20-minute drive away from my neighborhood, so it wasn't too close. Nighttime was rapidly approaching, and he had to get home soon, but we wanted to go to our favorite burger joint first. This burger place was about halfway between our houses, so the plan was to skate to the burger joint, eat up, and part ways, him continuing home, and me going back the way we came. It was already dark by the time we were 3/4 of the way to the burger place, but I wasn't too concerned. The area we were going through wasn't exactly the safest to be in, but it wasn't really dangerous if you were using the main road and weren't wearing gang colors. I knew I'd be safe skating back home, even if it was dark. Suddenly, my skateboard stopped and I went flying forwards. I wasn't hurt, but I inspected my skateboard to determine the cause, and I noticed that one of the wheels was completely missing. I looked all around the sidewalk and didn't see anything. I tried looking on the street for the wheel, but couldn't find it. Going on the road to search wasn't really an option, since it's a very busy road. I knew I was going to have to walk home, and couldn't go further because that would mean a lot more walking, so I parted ways with my friend A, and he advised me to take a bus home, even though I didn't have enough for bus fare. The bus drivers around here take sympathy on people down on their luck, so I was just going to explain my story and hope the couple of quarters I had would be enough. I found the nearest bus bench and sat down to begin the wait. After about 5 minutes or so, I see a girl wearing nice clothes, but looked like as if she hadn't changed nor showered in a week, cross the street over to my side. She asked if I had a cigarette, and I said no, and she continued to walk in the direction she was going. Now, from my experience, I have learned to always keep an eye on people that are behind you, especially in areas like that. So I did, and she didn't even take 20 paces before she turned and walked back over to me and sat very close to me on the bench. I felt uncomfortable having her so close to me, but didn't say anything about it. She asked me where I was going. I said home. She asked where I live. I said down the street. She kept asking increasingly uncomfortable questions, to which I only gave vague answers to. Then, she obviously spotted someone behind me, and was very frantic, beckoning motions to whoever she was looking at. Red flags shot up, and I noticed a lull in the street traffic right in front of me, so I sprinted across the road almost instantly after her beckoning. Fortunately, it being a busy road, the traffic started up almost as soon as I got to the other side. I look back, and I see her talking with two big-looking guys on bikes, obviously looking at me while doing so. I start briskly walking in the direction of home, clutching my broken skateboard, ready to whack potential assailants in the face. I did not bother waiting for any more buses. After about an hour of walking, I finally got home and immediately went to bed. I got new wheels the next morning, and everything was back to normal. That's all. It may not sound like much, but it was a very scary experience for me, and I hope I accurately convey that sense. I always make sure my wheels are tightly secured before any journey now. I would hate to take another nightly walk through a bad area. Michael Myers. Posting this on my phone, so I apologize for any errors. When I was 12 years old, my eldest younger sister was 10. The youngest couldn't even talk and is irrelevant. My dad was in the military, and we lived on a military base. It was around Halloween time, and I was walking to my boyfriend's house to skateboard, doing shit in the parking lot, thinking we were like Tony Hawk. Between two of the buildings, I spotted a creeper in a Michael Myers mask, who receded into the shadows when I spotted him. It being right around Halloween, I was like, whatever. I saw him again the next morning, waiting for the bus, but the other kids thought I was trying to scare them, because he'd skunked behind a building and no one else saw him. I was finding it kind of sketchy at this point, but didn't really press the issue. On Halloween, my sister and I went trick-or-treating, and I saw this guy dressed as Michael Myers following us between the houses all night. Never acknowledged and avoided the shadows. That night, my sister came into my room and said, "Hey, we have a problem." I went into her room, and the Michael Myers creep was standing in our backyard staring up at her window. We got our parents, but he jetted when they got there. A week later, someone tried to kidnap my sister while she was walking to school. No idea if it was related, but God, it was unsettling. Please don't videotape us. I'm a usual lurker on the site. Me and the friend in the story share this account. This is my first time actually posting anything, so don't expect a beautifully written piece of art. I doubt this is as creepy as a lot of the other experiences, but I thought it was. I'm not using my real name or my friend's name. Just a little background information that you'll need. My friend and I were about 11 years old when this happened. The man that my friend and I had the encounter with is the husband of our school's librarian. Not only this, but he lives up the street from me. I've had many other creepy encounters with him, but today, I'll be only sharing this one. So me and my friend have been hanging out that day. She's still my best friend to this day. We'll give her the name Candy. We're just fooling around being girls. We're talking about sports and how she wanted to learn to skateboard. Luckily, my little brother wasn't using his multiple skateboards at the time, so I thought we could try and learn to skateboard together. Candy agreed, so we grabbed 2 skateboards and grabbed 2 helmets. We went to the top of the street. It's like a gradual slope that meanders down. At this time, my neighbor Don L. came out of his house. He paused by his car, which happened to be where we were positioned ourselves, ready to go down the hill. He asked us what we were doing, and I just replied that we were skateboarding. He just smiled and walked back into his house. Candy and I had gone down the hill for a few times, and I'd actually gotten the hang of it and were planning to go down again. Right when we were at the top, Candy noticed him coming out of his home again and pointed. He had come outside, but with a video camera and a stand for it. He positioned it on the hood of his car, pointing it towards us. He was smiling creepily in our direction, but we ignored him and kept riding. But I could still see the light that meant the camera was recording. Why was this guy recording us? Why? This time, instead of going back to the top, we decided to ride down from midway up to the street. This time, he decided to follow us around as we rode without the tripod. I could hear him whispering under his breath, saying things like, "Keep it up, girls," or "Good job, you're doing a great job." Candy, being the outgoing and assertive person she is, got off the skateboard and went up to him. She went up to him and asked him to please stop recording and to shut off the camera. I internally thanked her and nodded my head. All he did was smile that creepy smile again and shut off the camera. Candy walked back to me, and we watched him go back inside his house. We left immediately and took cover in my house. That's about it. I have multiple other creepy encounters, so I might post those as well. Escaping the woods alive. It was the first time Seattle had ever been in the Super Bowl. Year 2005. The only reason I remember this is because I remember the loud cheers that surrounded my friend and I as we were out in the woods, unsure if we would ever be able to escape the dark forest alive. At the time, the cheers sounded more like screams. Let me explain. I was a 14-year-old girl who loved skateboarding with her best friend. We were little petite punk girls who loved to explore and skateboard. My friend was over at my house, but everyone there was transfixed by the football game. The whole neighborhood was filled up with noises of people cheering on the Seahawks. It was, and still is, a safe and normally quiet, middle to upper middle class neighborhood. It was around maybe 7 or 8 p.m. at night, but by this point it was very dark. Not pitch black, but that deepest, darkest blue that remains until midnight. My friend had cigarettes, and we decided we were going to sneak away and skateboard to the forest down the street to smoke and hang out in the woods. The woods were a long stretch of forest that rested in the middle of our neighborhood. On each side, steep slopes ran upwards and back into the fences of people's houses. Everyone called it a green belt, because the only entrance was at the beginning, and the only exit on the other end. It felt like you were in a valley of sorts, surrounded by trees and houses far above. All the neighborhood kids explored it, and it was not uncommon to find hidden trails that led towards makeshift forts. Anyways, we arrived at the forest and walked until we found a clearing far enough away from the entrance that adults couldn't see us smoking. At the time, we didn't realize this, but most every single adult was inside watching the Super Bowl. It felt safe there, in the dark, smoking and laughing with my friend, because we could hear cheers echoing from nearby houses. We had enough cigarettes to each have our own, but we liked sharing one at a time and passing it back and forth. It made us feel connected and cool. We were sharing our second cigarette, which was in between my fingers. I remember my friend laughing, trying to grab it from me. All of a sudden, she stopped laughing. Her eyes grew wide, and she slowly pointed behind me. "Not gonna work, Jess." I thought she was trying to make me look away so she could grab the cigarette out of my hands. I could barely hear her whisper over the cheers that echoed through the forest. I'm not kidding." I turned around and looked behind me, my eyes squinting in the darkness. I didn't see anything until I looked at the top of the slope. The top of the slope, which ran about 50 feet up, was not that far from us. There, a man was standing, watching us. The woods were almost always empty, except for the occasional kid or teenager. Adults just used the woods as a place to dump yard clippings and old compost stuff. He was wearing all black and had on a ski cap. His hands were shoved deeply into his pockets. I remember thinking he was very tall, though I couldn't see his facial features very well. I waved at him, wondering how long he had been standing there. It struck me that he may have been there the whole time. I hoped it was a neighbor. I waited for him to yell at us for smoking, threatened to tell our parents anything. He didn't wave back. He didn't make a sound. "Hello?" I choked out. The man did not respond. His hands remained in his pockets. The dim lights from a distant back porch behind him illuminated him ever so slightly. I whispered to my friend Jess, "What do we do?" The man took his hands out of his pockets. He had on gloves. And not gardening gloves. He walked one step down the slope towards us. I could hear the sound of leaves crunching beneath him. He stood still again, watching, waiting. More cheers erupted in the distance. The cheers that sounded so comforting less than half an hour ago now sounded foreboding. "I don't know," I whispered. "If we scream, no one would even be able to hear us. Everyone is screaming right now." Tears began to pool in her eyes. I'd never seen her cry, and I'd known her for 9 years by this point. I decided I had to think, and fast. Crunch. The man took another step. "What?" I screamed. "What do you want from us?" He began to pull his ski cap down. It was then we both realized it wasn't a ski cap, but rather a ski mask. I yelled at her, "Run! Grab your skateboard!" At the time, I was thinking we could hit him with our skateboard if he tried anything. It's probably silly, being as we each only weighed about 100 pounds or less. We got up and began running out of the woods. Like a horror movie, the man simply walked at his fast pace after us. I guess we weren't running very fast, because we each were holding a skateboard. Once we got out of the woods, it was all back uphill towards my house. The man was a house length distance or so behind us. His mask was pulled back up again. I wanted to ring a neighbor's doorbell, yell anything, but we were so scared. Scared no one could hear us. Scared that we ran to a neighbor's house, that they wouldn't be home. We ran as fast as we could up that damn hill. We were about 3 houses away from my home when the man behind us just stopped. We kept running away. We made it back to my house, breathing heavily and covered in dirt from running through the forest. What exactly had just happened? "Girls, there you are!" I thought my dad was angry that we had left without asking. Instead, he sighed and just said, "Well, The Seahawks just lost the Super Bowl. So, creepy masked man who watches girls in the forest from above. Let's not meet again. Ever.